Okay, so I think so. My screen is visible. Great. So today's session is about industrial control system security because the topic that is today is specifically onto the device level vulnerability, and we will be talking on the embedded security and firmware analysis, side channel attacks, and some of the points related to the malware analysis. Okay. So only if time permits, then only we will start with the malware analysis because already we have done the static analysis. And the dynamic analysis part, we will be trying to cover in a long session. In the 4 hours long session, we will be covering the malware analysis dynamic part. Okay. Because today session is very much interesting, and I have created ICS environment for you. Okay, so let me start with my presentation so that you can have a brief idea about it. Okay, so I hope my screen is properly visible. Okay, that's good. That's good. So, what is to be today's topic? It's all about device level vulnerability, and I welcome you all in this 2 hour session where we will be talking on to some of the very important topics into the cybersecurity. And specifically, since most of the people are into the ICS environment, having exposure to the ICS environment, so this piece of information that I am going to share today will be definitely useful to you. So I've just created a sample ICS environment in which I have put down a certain HMI and I have put down a PLC. I have put down a workstation and I have also simulated the entire environment into the real life scenario. Okay, so what I have done is I have create virtualized the entire sections. Okay, so if you are able to see HMI, so I have created and deployed on my system a real HMI into the virtualized form. I have simulated a pressure plant, actually a chemical plant basically. That's a simulation of a chemical plant. So what I'm trying to cover today is some of the topic that is very much useful to you. Just a moment, I'm just checking what's happened with my pen. So in the previous sections, we have talked about zoning. Okay, we have talked about zoning. So this is the same part that I have done. Uh, I'm going to show you a scenario where there is a HMI, okay, and there is a PLC, and there is a plant. Okay, so what's actually happening? We have created a plant, a simulated plant, which is basically ICS environment. The plant is uh, is maintaining some of the important variables like pressure and other related variables. There is a separate PLC, okay, which is basically reading the entire data of the plant. This PLC is basically sending the entire data to the HMI, that is the human machine interface, and HMI data is available on the SCADA. Okay. So, this entire scenario we have created for the purpose of demonstration, and we are going to see that how the different type of attacks are happening onto the ICS. Okay. So we are going to see all this, that how the things are happening. We will see one by one that how the Modbus packets are basically uh, moving from one device to another. Because the thing is that the PLC is basically sensing the data and it is sending to the HMI through the Modbus. Okay, so the communication media is actually Modbus, and again HMI is sending the data to the SCADA in the form of different protocols. So all these things we are going to see. We have also simulated one firewall also. Okay, so this is the firewall. It is a software-based firewall. The manufacturer of the firewall is PFSense. Okay, so basically what we are doing, we have created two different zones. Okay, so we have created two different zones. One is a militarized zone, and the one is other one is a demilitarized zone. Okay, so all these devices are into the same network, into the militarized zone, and the device that is we called as a HMI, because HMI is a sensitive device, and HMI can control actually the plants. Okay, because what the main functionality of a HMI is the human machine interface, that it can control the plant. So we have, for the additional layer of security, we have put down into the DMC. Okay, so this is the simulated environment that we have created. Okay, so this is like one of the picture of the simulated environment, where we are getting certain levels and we are getting certain pressures into this particular pressure tank. Okay, and apart from this, certain values of the chemicals are there, and also the pressure valves are showing some particular pressure levels, as you can see into the screen. We will see in the live part also. Okay. Apart from this, we have also deployed SCADA BR. Okay, the SCADA BR is basically an open source SCADA system, and in this open source SCADA system, we are actually uh, depicting this plant. Okay, so this is the plant, and we are actually depicting the entire plant into this SCADA, so that a person who is sitting somewhere else can also see the real values. So we will see that how the pressures are maintaining, how the levels are maintaining. Actually, it is the same replica, but the thing is that the previous picture is a plant, and this picture is basically for the SCADA. Okay. So let us see this, that how exactly we have created. I will show you one by one that how the entire thing is actually working. Okay, just a minute. Okay, so I think so. My screen is visible to you, no, properly. Great. So if you are able to see my screen, this is basically the simulation of the chemical plant. Okay, this is the simulation of the chemical plant, and we are running the entire VMs. Okay, let me open that also. Okay, so if you can see, we are running basically five VMs. One is this PFSense VM, which is a firewall, and then the second one is a chemical plant VM, and then when we have a SCADA BR VM, then we have a PLC, and then we have a workstation inside the scenario. Okay, so these all VMs are up and running. Okay, so you can see this. Okay, so like this is my PFSense VM, as you can see, and this PFSense VM, if you are able to see, it is having two networks. One is a WAN and another one is a LAN. So basically, the segregation of the DMZ zone and MZ zone is doing by my this PFSense firewall. Okay, and then we have a chemical plant running. Okay, so we have a chemical plant running. It is a separate virtual machine. Then we have a separate VM for the SCADA. Okay, so SCADA VR is separate machine that we are already running, and we have also one more machine for the PLC. Okay, so I think so. Screen is probably visible to you. Different machines are in front of you. Okay. Okay. So these are the live simulated virtual machines that I have deployed just specifically for this training. And what I'm going to show you now, that this is the real simulation of a plant. Okay, so you are able to see that different values are changing regularly. Okay, so like in the plant, different values are changing. So this is a simulated environment of a plant, and the details of the plant is actually read by the PLC. After reading from the PLC, it is going to this SCADA. Okay, so this is the SCADA VR system. Let me relog in it. So if you're able to see, let me log into the SCADA VR. So now you can see that this is the system is up and running, and as you can see, the pressures are continuously changing. Okay, the pressures are continuously changing. It means the data is flowing in a good way. Also, on the part of BR, like SCADA. So I'm just going to share you that how the actual look and feel of the SCADA is. So if some people are already having a good exposure to SCADA, definitely they have seen this type of ICS SCADA. But if you are new to the field of SCADA, so this would be a good thing for you, that you can see this open source SCADA where the real pictures and real functionalities are there. Okay, so we have an option here that the various values on different pressure areas or different like levels. See, if you can see that what is the level, what is the pressure, what is the A flow, what is the A valve pressure, what is the B flow, B valve pressure. So what is the total product flow, what is the total product value. So basically, this SCADA is reading, is basically displaying all the values in the real time. Okay, so you can see that values are changing into the real time. The values are read by the PLC, and PLC is pushing the data to the my SCADA VR into the real time. Also, we have a functionality here that we can see the entire reports, that how my pressure and how my other details are being changing. Okay, so let me populate the chart. Okay. So these are the details. Apart from this, we have certain more functionalities, that a graphical view is always there for the better visualization of the certain products. One more thing I want to show you, that we have a separate uh, workstation. Okay, so this is a separate workstation which is running. Okay, which is running onto the same network. So might be something might be cozy to you, and you might feel that I'm running a little bit fast, but I'm just giving you an idea that how the exact ICS is actually looking like. Okay, so this is the virtual machine, and in this virtual machine, the location of the virtual machine is exactly like this. If you can see in this picture, this workstation. Okay, so this workstation I'm talking about. Okay, this particular workstation. This particular workstation I'm talking about. Okay, so this is the workstation, and we have a separate PLC editor over there. Okay, Open PLC is the Open PLC editor we have, and if certain attacker get an access to this particular this workstation, which is inside the MZ zone, so various tasks he can do. Okay, because he can directly access to the PLC. Let me give you a brief idea that how PLC can be configured. Okay, so if you can see, like this is the IP of my PLC. So if you remember, I have shared you a particular slide. So if you can see, the PLC IP that I have shown inside the network is 192.168.95.2. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, now I'm going to configure this particular IP. Okay, so if you can see into my URL, I'm just going to refresh it. Okay, so this is basically a open PLC server where we can connect different PLCs, and our this particular PLC can be accessible through this URL. Okay, so current PLC status is running. You can see that if I stop this PLC from this particular point, okay, so if I just click on stop, so the current PLC is being stopped, and you can see that plant is up and running, but definitely the values to the SCADA is being stopped. Are you able to see this particular thing? Yes or no? Because what the actually PLC is doing, PLC is reading the values. On the contrary side, if you can see, the plant is up and running. There is no issue in the plant, because how this plant is affected? We have not done anything for the plant. We have just stopped the PLC from one of our workstation. So what I want to mention here, that even if a person get an access to your workstation, then he has a functionality to stop and run your PLCs. Okay, so let me run it again. Okay, so now my PLCs are up and running. Yeah, now go further. Okay, so now you can see the again SCADA VR is working fine, and the data from the plants are now perfectly pushing to this. Is it clear up till now? Any questions anyone have into the configuration? Because after this we are moving to certain attacks. The relation between the open PLC and SCADA VR is that if you see this particular ICS environment, you can see this is the simulated environment. Okay, so this is my basically plant. Let me explain you a little bit more. Okay, what's happening? Okay, so this is my plant. Okay, my PLC is reading the values from my plant. My PLC is reading the values from my plant, and this PLC is sending the data to my HMI, okay, which is basically a SCADA VR. This HMI has a functionality is for start and stop the plant. Okay, if I stop the plant from a HMI, the plant will stop. So PLC is just reading the data. Okay, so PLC is just reading the data and sending it to HMI. And HMI has a functionality. That is the meaning of the HMI. HMI full form is human machine interface. Yeah, human machine interface. So basically, what's the meaning of a broad meaning of human machine interface is that a human can control a machine. That exactly the definition we used to study into the OT technology. Okay, so the entire part we are studying right now is the pure part of OT, that HMI is controlling a plant. Okay, so if you can remember when we are seeing the SCADA VR, just a minute. So this is the SCADA VR. You can see there is a button start and stop. Okay, so let me stop this plant. Okay, so I have stopped this plant. Let me see what's happening onto the plant. You can see the pressure is continuously decreasing. Is it visible? You can see the pressure is continuously decreasing. It means somebody has controlled your SCADA BR, your HMI, and he has decreased the pressure. Okay, so let me again start my plant. So I have again started my plant, and you can see the pressure is again started going to build after a few amount of time. Okay, so in this way, the entire you can see the pressure started working. I think it's visible. Yeah. So this is how the exact scenarios are working into the industry. Okay. So whether you are into the electrical industry, whether you are into the process automation, or on any type of automation you have, and if you are working into the ICS environment, so these are the major issues that you can face into the particular type of uh, you can see the environment. So now I would like to uh, ask everyone that what are the different vulnerabilities you are able to observe in these type of devices. Just type into the chat box. Okay, so we have just seen environment an ICS environment where we have an HMI. The HMI is basically having the capability to control the plants, control the machines, and even in the in into the grid, into the power grids, these HMI has a functionality to open the relay, to close the relay, to operate a relay, to change the threshold values into the distance relays. So these HMIs are very powerful devices because they have a direct access to the systems. Okay. So we have two different issues lying with all these devices, whether it is HMI and whether it is a PLC workstation. So HMI is broadly covered into the OT part. Our firewall is broadly covered into the IT part. Workstation is also an IT part. PLC is purely a OT part, and this simulation is basically the OT part. So these are the OT devices, and as you can see, what the functionality of an OT is to process the data to do certain tasks. Okay, so these are the functionality we have seen. Now, my question to everyone is, as you have seen that these are different type of devices we have seen different type of OT devices, different type of IT devices. So, what are the major vulnerabilities you can observe in all this? And what are the major bottlenecks, major drawbacks that usually these devices have. Okay, so just a quick question to everyone, and I want everyone to respond. You can please respond into the chat box. Yeah, definitely. Yes, legacy is a very good answer. Legacy devices is a real case because we put the devices into the network, okay, and changing the devices is very much hard. Okay, so if you can see this is a plant. Okay, so this is a chemical plant simulation in which you can see this is this is chemical A, chemical B, chemical C, chemical D, and all these chemicals are basically maintaining a certain pressure, and there is a sensor. Okay, so there is a sensor who is working here, and he is reading the pressures. So point is that these OT devices are developed as per the requirement of the entire plant level machinery. Okay, so changing the entire plant will basically changing the entire OT sometimes. So that's why I have seen the OT, which is running from last 20 years also in some of the ICS environments. Okay, so that's the main point. Second thing, the second major issue into the OT side. The second major issue is that most of the data is basically unencrypted. Okay. Most of the data which is traveling from plant, reading by PLC, sending it to SCADA for the operations of the HMI. So all these data are basically encrypted. Can anybody tell me why still these all data are unencrypted? Why we are not encrypting all these? Any specific reason? No, actually, no, no. Yes. So basically, two issues are evolving. One is the interoperability. One issue is the interoperability, that we have a certain Siemens PLC into the field, which is pushing data to the historian, and historian and SCADA is of Orient uh, manufacturer. So first issue is that. Second issue is availability, because if you encrypt the thing and you again decrypt the thing, definitely it will take a time. Okay. If you encrypt the thing and if you decrypt the thing, it will take a time. In IT, we have a huge computation power. Okay, so you can see that you have 2.8 gigahertz of 8 core processor into the IT. Okay, but when you go to the OT side, you can see only 488 megahertz processor with 512 KB of RAM and 3 MB of hard disk. So can you imagine to put the encryption into this? And now the second question is that why we are not enhancing all this? Why we are not enhancing the computational power? Why we are not enhancing the volatile and non-volatile memory? The reason is we have to make the systems in such a way that they can work into the rugged conditions. Okay, so if in this example, if you can see, this is the pressure sensor. The pressure sensor is already onto the 2684 kPa, which is having a temperature of more than 180 degrees centigrade. If you put a laptop or computer here, do you think that that device will survive? Okay, so there are a lot of developmental issues. There are a lot of physical functionality issues that also need to be taken care of. So these are the two major points. One is the availability. We have a high availability of systems, and the second thing is interoperability. So these two things we need to take care of. So So the major motive of putting the firewall is to secure the simulation. That I want to make you people understand that HMIs always put HMIs into the DMZ zone. Okay, so they are into the different IP pool, and your basically devices, or you can say your plant level machinery, should be in a different IP pool. Understood? So these are the major points that we are going to discuss today now in more detail. Okay. So let's come back to the topic. So today's topic is about the device level vulnerability. So the topic is device level vulnerability. Let's start with the definition. Okay, so what is the definition for the device level vulnerability? So device level vulnerability refers to security weakness found in hardware devices, firmware, or low level software, potentially allowing attackers to compromise the device functionality, extract sensitive data, or control it maliciously. Okay. So the major issues with the device level vulnerability arises from. So what is the origin of a device level vulnerability? Okay, who will tell me what is the original origin of device level vulnerability? If I say you that device is like built in Germany. Okay, so device, let us say, built in Germany. Okay, Germany supply chain. Okay, if you remember our previous session. Okay, okay. So the previous session, which is boring for you people, I think so, because I'm helpless. Okay, so I'm really helpless because the topic is a framework, so I have to strict myself to the framework. I have also had certain restrictions. Yeah, just a minute, just a minute. Yeah, so I'm audible. Okay, so issue generates from the supply chain. I don't want to mention any country specific or domain specific, device specific, no? But if you see a recent pager attack, I think everyone is well versed this with this recent pager attack. So what actually happened into this? The warehouse in which the entire pagers are being stored and supplied, some changes and some explosive are being attached with the pager. Okay, so basically, during the supply chain, we have a different level of sensors we have. Okay, sensors, or you can say different peoples who are coming into the picture for delivering the same device to you. Okay, so supply chain is an issue, and physical access, definitely physical access is a big issue. If you give a physical access to to certain people, then definitely they can have an access to you. In the recent example that I have given to you, if you give a physical access to your workstation, okay, if you give a physical access or to your workstation, which is into the MZ zone, militarized zone of your network, So what do you think? What that attacker or what that person can do? Definitely, anything he can do. He can start, he can stop, he can change the values. So if you give a physical access to that, it will create an issue. Now, if when I'm talking onto the ISO 27001 standard, I have talked on a very serious topic, that who is the first person is coming to the office and who is the last person coming to the office. Okay, so the janitor who is the person coming first to the office, and the guard who is coming last to the office could be a possible traitor. Yes or no? You can type into the chat box, please. So the point is that anything can be accessed during the physical. So device level vulnerability is basically the security weakness found in hardware, devices, and firmware. So what is the firmware? Firmware is the hard coded. Okay, so the defined definition of the firmware is the hard coded software on your device. Okay, so you have usually do not have an access to it, but using certain tools, you can extract that software and you can check the vulnerabilities. Okay, so if you, what's the different issue that we usually observed with the firmware is that firmwares may contain connections or details related to the IOC. It may have certain details of the C2IP. It may have certain time-based issues that after certain years or certain time or at certain triggers, you can do this particular type of thing. So firmware has lot of issues. We will see in the upcoming slides that how these firmwares are impacting. So how these device level issues are exploited. So we have seen firmware attacks, we have side channel attacks. These side channel attacks are really interesting. We have seen supply chain attacks in the last session, and there are also a chance of a physical attacks, weak authentication and encryption. So these are the attacks we have. So let us study these attacks one by one. So on the very first point, we have firmware attacks. In firmware attacks, they are exploiting the vulnerabilities in the firmware of the device, such as routers, IoT devices, or embedded devices. If you see, we have printers, we have scanners into our offices and our homes. And after 4 or 5 years, sometimes the devices are giving a requirement of a firmware update. Usually, firmware updates are not frequently. If you see into the IT systems, the firmware, the software updates are usually into the 2 to 5 months or something. But into the OT side, whenever we talk about firmware, even for the IT side, you have a certain BIOS level configurations into your machine, into your PC or into your laptop. So, what do you think? You got the how much number of updates for BIOS and how much number of updates you got for your Windows? Tell me. If I talk about numbers, if this could be a one, this could be 100. Tell me, I'm true or false? False? what I'm asking, what I'm telling you, that you are getting high number of updates for BIOS or high number of updates for Windows. Windows. So that is the point I'm telling you, that for the OT side, not OT, I'm not talking about OT, I'm just talking about the firmware. So in the firmware, you usually do not get the updates. Okay, but for the software side, you frequently getting an update. This BIOS is a part of IT or OT. It is a part of IT because it is your IT machine. Okay, but the point is that still, even it is a part of IT, you are not getting proper updates. Why? Because regular updates are not required. Only the major vulnerabilities, if disclosed by certain agencies or something, then only these type of updates can be released. Then we have a side channel attacks. Okay, just me let me remove all this. Okay, so we have seen certain firmware-based attacks. Okay, okay. So these are certain firmware-based attacks. Then we have side channel attacks. Okay, we will see side channel attacks. Okay. So major device level attacks. What major device level attacks we have faced? So there is an attack in year 2018, which is called as a meltdown and Spectre device level attack. It is basically a CPU vulnerability, and these vulnerabilities exploit speculative execution, a performance optimization feature in modern CPUs. By manipulating how CPUs are predicting the execute instructions, attacker could access sensitive data from the memory of the running application. So basically, they have impacted the Intel machines, AMD machines, and ARM machines for accessing the sensitive data. So, what are the firmware attacks? Firmware attacks are the type of cyber attack that target the firmware, okay, which is the low-level software controlling the device hardware. Actually, these all are the low-hanging fruits. The all are the low-hanging fruit means they are easy to be cracked because most of the firmwares are not protected with so much of security mechanism. Okay, so if you see, like if you have seen certain rootkits and bootkits, okay, so these are the focusing malwares. These are the malwares designed for the firmware. Okay, so these are the particular malwares who are targeting the firmware. Firmware is basically embedded in the hardware components such as computer, router, IoT. So every device, every hardware device is having a particular firmware. Okay, so if you have a CCTV camera, it is having a firmware. If you have a DVR, it is having a firmware. If you have a laptop, and in that laptop there is a BIOS configuration, it is nothing but a firmware. It runs critical operations that initializes hardware and communicate with the operating system. Whenever you start the system, okay, so whenever you are going to start the system, the OS level configuration came very late. Okay, initially the kernel plus this firmware will going to be interact with each other and start the particular OS. So the initial communications for any type of machine is basically done by the firmware and the kernel, and these attacks are majorly on the firmware and majorly on the kernel. If I talk about rootkits are focusing on the kernel only. Okay, kernel based attacks majorly are rootkits have, because firmware operates below the operating system level. Attack on it can be especially dangerous or persistent. Okay, most of the rootkits are actually not able to detect. Why they are not able to detect? Because they are running behind the OS. They are running below the OS, and OS has no access behind below its particular level. So these are the major points into the firmware attack. So how a firmware attack works? So how firmware attack works? Firmware attack basically exploit the vulnerabilities or design flaws in the firmware to gain unauthorized control or manipulating a device. Okay. If you remember, we have talked certain things into the attack life cycle. We have studied attack life cycle in our previous sessions, where we have talked about the reconnaissance. We have talked about the reconnaissance. So how reconnaissance will be helping to orchestrate and firmware attack? See, during the reconnaissance, we are able to find out the type of machine of the victim. Okay. If you're able to get the type of machine of the victim, you may be able to get the version of the firmware. Okay, and these versions of the firmware can be used to find out the vulnerability into the firmware, and which could be a possible entry point of an attacker into the firmware. So attackers find an entry point through vulnerabilities in the firmware, often though through unpatched systems, weak encryptions, and improper validation of firmware updates. Okay. They may often also gain access through physical tampering or supply chain attacks. Second possible mechanism is through the privilege escalation. So once he get into entry into the system, he try to privilege the access. Okay. So initially, if any attacker is inside your system, so probably there is a huge chance that he has no access uh, to do the operations of certain things. Okay. I'm really worried that why people are more focusing on creating the group. Okay, and it's really not acceptable. We have told you many times that if you are into the class or if I am delivering a session, please do not do all these type of activities. Okay, so it's really not acceptable. Seriously. And if you are going to continue all this, then definitely we are going to terminate the entire internship. Okay, we are not going to deliver any sessions in future if same things happen again. Seriously. Okay, so come back to the topic, privilege escalations. So since firmware operates with higher privilege escalation, so see we need to do the higher level of privilege escalation because to orchestrate certain attack we need to have privileges. Okay, so a person got an entry, now he need to escalate the privileges, now he need to do the persistence means he need to be in your system, he need to be in your system, he wants to be in your system because usually firmware is stored in a non-volatile memory, which means it remains intact even when the device is powered off. Okay, so the attacker will put his malware and put his persistence connections to this particular non-volatile memory. Okay, so we have two type of memories into our system. One is a non-volatile memory, and one is a volatile memory. Okay, so volatile memory is your RAM plus your cache cache memory. Okay, and the other memories which is entirely your non-volatile memory. So once compromised, it can persistent undetected for a long time, as most antivirus or security tools do not routinely scan firmware. Okay. So most of the antiviruses are not actually scanning the firmware. So this is a possible cause of that the point that the firmwares are being undetected. Then we have execution of malicious actions. So once he escalate the privileges, so after gaining control of the firmwares, attacker can manipulate how the device functions. He can alter the boot processes or disable the security features. He can install backdoors for remote access, like reverse shell. Okay, so these the malwares can steal data or monitor use activities, spread malware to other connected system or devices like worms are doing. Okay. So these are the major points that the device level vulnerabilities are having. What are the methods of firmware attacks? How the malicious actors, how the APTs are attacking on the firmware. So they do firmware modification, they do firmware corruption, they do certain supply chain attacks, malicious firmware updates. So in firmware modification, the attacker rewrites the firmware, often inserting malicious code or backdoors. Let us suppose the firmware is this is the original firmware. Okay. So this is just a simple, just don't go with the flow of data. Now, what the attacker has done, attacker has inserted some of its bits of the interest and just upload this firmware into your machine by any case. Okay. So the device will work normally. Okay. The device will work normally because device working is basically the first three bits, which he has not changed. But he has changed the next three bits, which is basically his intention to insert a certain malicious code. Okay, so firmware modifications can be there. Firmware corruption: the attacker corrupts or deletes the firmware, rendering the device inoperable. So sometimes attacker come to your machine and delete the entire firmware so that you are not able to do anything. So this is the type of firmware attack people usually seeing. Then we have a supply chain attack. Okay, so malicious firmware can be pre-installed on devices during manufacturing or distribution. This can go undetected until the device is deployed, and 98% of firmware attacks are just because of supply chain. So you can imagine that that high amount of supply chain issues uh, we are facing globally. If you see examples of firmware attacks, the Stuxnet, okay, Stuxnet happens in 2010, which is like 14 years before. So it is one of the most famous firmware attacks. Stuxnet targeted Siemens PLC. So, okay, who will tell me that how the Stuxnet has been originated? Like, what is the origin point of the Stuxnet? Yes, the correct methodology is called baiting. The correct methodology is baiting, where you drop a USB and that USB has certain malware. Okay, so that's happened into the Stuxnet also. USB is being dropped near the facility, and someone has picked that USB and inserted into the network. And the studies have shown that the USB has inserted in year 2008. The attack happened in which year? 2010. So malware is basically spreaded in the 2 years span of time into the entire nuclear facility, Iranian nuclear facility, and end of the day impacted the Iranian nuclear centrifuges. So this attack showed how firmware vulnerabilities could be exploited to affect the critical infrastructure, and particularly into the Siemens PLC, they have modified the addresses, the memory addresses, and the PLC's data. Okay, so these are the two small things that they have done into the Siemens PLC, but the result we all know are drastic. They are just a great example for the researchers who are into the cybersecurity field to study. Okay, OLID, we are talking about the Stuxnet origin. Okay, so the second attack is on the Thunderbird, Thunderstrike 2015. So a firmware attack on Apple MacBooks that replaced the firmwares on the boot ROM, allowing the malware to persist through OS, reinstall, and even disk wipes. Okay, so basically this happens on the Apple MacBooks, and this firmware has written himself into the boot ROM. Okay, which is a read-only memory. Okay, so you can see that how effective the malware writers are, that they have impacted the read-only memory. Okay, so the hard-coded things are also being changed. Then we have a TrickBot 2020, a malware strain that included the UEFI firmware module designed to infect the firmwares of system motherboard, making the infection highly persistent even across OS reinstalls. Okay, so in this 2020, the UEFI firmware, which is basically your system, your PC or laptop firmware, and it is being impacted. So basically, the BIOS level settings are basically impacted into the TrickBot. So what can be the impact of the firmware attacks? They can put up persistence with your system. So firmware level attacks are difficult to detect and remove, as they persist even after reboots, reinstalls, and factory resets. This make them ideal for long-term espionage or sabotage. Okay, so persistence can be really alarming. I am reading an article where there is a malware into a certain device. Okay, and that device firmware is designed in such a way that it just give one bit of signal in every 3 years to the C2IP. So you can imagine that how cleverly these machines are being designed. These malwares are being designed particularly for the firmwares. And specifically when we talk about OT, so these could be really alarming. Okay, this could be really alarming. Then we have a control. So attackers can gain a deep control over devices, allowing them to manipulate how the hardware operates, disable security features, and interface with the boot processes. Still, because firmware operates below the operating systems, attacks on this level often go unnoticed by traditional antivirus or monitoring system, making them highly effective for covert operations. Okay, so this is the real issue that for the covert operation, uh, we really facing a lot of attacks. My audio is fine, Miyake. Just check. And if still you people are getting facing issues with the audio, just drop a message. Thank you. Okay, so these are the issues that we have seen. Then device compromise. Okay, so this is a major issue, device compromise, where firmware attacks can lead to bricked devices, data theft, surveillance, or physical damage. Depending on the attacker's goal, devices that are part of critical infrastructure, like industrial control system, can be especially vulnerable and impactful when compromised. Okay, so like we have seen into the previous uh, demo that I've seen for the chemical plant today, that how these things will going to be impacted. Just a minute, please. Okay, so let's start with how you are going to mitigate these firmware attacks. So secure boot is a good options that are available now. So implementing secure boot processes ensure that only authenticated firmware can run. This prevent attackers from loading malicious firmware during the boot process. Like in HP, I have a HP laptop and there is the option of Valve security. Okay, so they have a this secure boot process, Valve security. What Valve security is doing at the boot of the system, all the devices which are connected through my USB or anything, their firmwares are being checked by this Valve security. So definitely it is taking us 7 to 8 seconds of more time in booting of my system. So definitely I have an option to disable this Valve security, but I have enabled, and sometimes it's taking more than 30 seconds for booting of my system. But it is checking all the firmwares which are connected with my machine. Then firmware updates is a great option. So regularly updating firmware and ensuring that updates are cryptographically signed and verified. So this is very important that the signed uh, firmware should be used. Okay, so do not download from untrusted sources. Do not download from untrusted sources because they are not probably cryptographically signed. Okay, then hardware security features. So utilizing hardware security features such as TPM trusted platform module, Intel has already integrated into his machine. Boot card can help you ensure that firmware has not been tampered with before the system starts. So for machines related to PC, laptop, or Intel or something, so TPM is a great module and physical six. So always enable this. Why I'm putting this? That always enable your TPM because sometimes people are not enabling the TPM. Then we have a certain physical security related mechanism that if you are putting the enough security related issues, physical security. So protecting device from physical access by unauthorized individual can prevent many type of firmware attacks, especially those that require direct access to your hardware. Firmware integrity checks. Implement integrity checks on firmware either via regular audits or during the uh, yeah, sorry for keep you on hold. There is a little network glitch that I faced. So let's move ahead. What are the important takeaways? So for the firmware security, firmware attacks are powerful. We have seen they are persistent, stealthy, making them one of the more dangerous form of cyber attacks because they are basically undetected. And a lot of tools we have for cyber security, but very few tools are basically focusing on the firmware. So they exploit vulnerabilities in low-level software that runs hardware devices, often bypassing traditional security measures. They are why they are so critical because they are delegate. Delegate means basically see everything is around the memory. We have a certain memory locations, and that memory location some data is written. Okay, so just by changing a data onto a certain memory location, the entire code will be going to be crashed. So these firmware attacks are so designed, so cleverly designed that can impact your entire system. Due to the critical role, firmware plays an important controlling hardware. Firmware attacks can have severe consequences from disabling services to infiltrating critical infrastructures. Robust firmware security measures, regularly updates, and careful supply chain monitoring are essential to defend against these type of attacks. Okay. So we have completed this particular. Okay, so now let's move on to the important part, that is the side channel attacks, and this is my favorite attack, and I really love to study more onto this. So what is a side channel attack? Okay, side channel attacks are the type of security exploit that target the physical implementation of systems rather than the software algorithm or protocol themselves. If I ask you a question that this is a data center, okay, this is a data center and some critical data is inside this data center. Okay. This data center has no internet, no MPLS, no LAN, means no network. Only internal switches are connected for the data transfer. Do you think still the data can be breezed out of this data center? Yes or no? Just how? In this particular case, let me add certain constraints and restrictions that there is no physical access to this. It is a militarized under the military control. No physical access. What can be the way the data can be? Definitely. So what I'm going to focus in this particular topic is entirely about this side channel attacks. And side channel attack is something which is happening using the physical signals and physical output. Okay, so side channel attack is something which is not using your software algorithm. No, it is not using your protocols. Usually, what we read that data is being exploited through DNS, using TCP/IP, UDP, and lot of protocols, fancy words we used to talk. But this side channel attack is not using anything. Okay, so these attacks exploit unintended information leaks or signals that arise from the physical properties or behavior of computing device during operation. So, what can be the physical property? Physical property can be sound, light, and vibrations. So, these physical properties can also help an attacker to share a particular data. Let me give you an example. Let us suppose that this is a data center. Okay, and in near to this data center there is a tea stall. Okay, this tea stall has some thermovision camera. I'm just giving everything in a hypothetical manner. Thermovision camera. What is a thermovision camera? Thermovision camera can detect the heat. Yes or no? Are you getting what I'm going to like? What the scenario I'm creating? I think everybody is going to connect. Okay, so this tea stall is having a facility with a thermovision camera that can detect the heat. Okay. Now there is a server inside which is having a critical data, and it has a certain malware which is came through the supply chain. There is a malware inside this server which is came through the supply chain. Now, after few years, the supply chain malware has activated and it is sending the physical information. How? This is called time-based attacks. Okay, time-based attacks. What's happening? That it heating up the server for more than 70 degrees centigrade for 2 seconds. For next 2 seconds, it is reducing the temperature. Okay, let us suppose 35, not 35, around 60 degrees. Then again for 2 seconds 60 degree, then again for 2 seconds 60 degree, then for continuously 8 seconds 70 degrees. So can we write this is a 1 1 0 0 1 1 1? Yes or no? Are you able to understand what I'm trying to make you people give an example? Hmm. Okay, so we are closing the session till now, and the attendance link will be shared in your group only, and you are requested to take a screenshot of this session and keep it with you, which is required at the end of the internship to everyone.